Rick, you never dealt with jealousy? Like you never helped someone on your crew and then they become envious of your stature or your
All the
name,
time.
or how do you deal? That's the hardest part. It's like we started up together, we get here, and then there's fracturing. Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, one of the things that always happen is when you build somebody up, they want to take your position, especially when it's men. Women not so
Talk.
much, but men always, I mean, it's like the king of the jungle. Which line is the strongest,
Yeah.
and once they get up, then they want to take your position. That happened when even family members do it. I've had cousins that I brought from Texas. They come out, they don't even have no shoes on, and after a couple months of getting them some money in their pocket, then they feel like they want to take my position. But that
Yeah.
happens all the time. But what I try to do is stay grounded and remember to elevate myself. As long as I keep elevating, nobody can take my position.
Mm.
You may
So,
take you may take that position that I had, but by the time you get that position, I've already moved to another position.
so you was very low key though. And even when you was
Yeah, I'm still
rising,
like that. I don't really I like making money, but I don't really spend money. I mean, right now, I probably spend a day on myself, probably about $60 a day.
Wow.
so talk about that. Like as far as like I said, especially in the '80s when. Because I read reports where cops sometimes they didn't even know who you was because you could kind of blend in for somebody that was just on the street. Like and that's very different from what most people would think about as far as a high profile person in that world. What made you have the discipline to just not only not spend money, but even your personal appearance, right? Like dress down, not be flashy. How did you get that?
Well, I had a stint. I was building a lowrider right before I started selling drugs, and I was stealing cars to do this. And I was about 18 and a half, and I was able to get a chop shop. I had my own building. I'd rented a building, me and one of my friends, and we were stealing cars, chopping them up, and we made good money. We were probably making, I probably made, and this is in the 80s, I probably was making $300 a night sometimes. And for people might say $300 a night, not really, but at that time
That
for
was a
me,
lot of money.
that was a lot of money. And what I was doing was putting all my money into this car. And when the police finally got into the shop, uh, and I was sitting in my jail cell, and I was like, damn, you did all that for a car. And I promised myself that night that I would never put all my energies into nothing that's materialized. So I took on the persona that I don't have to wear the clothes. I don't need their jewelry. I don't have to be flashy to be successful. So I wanted to be successful more than I wanted people to know that I was successful.
Do you think as a community we would do a lot better if we took that approach, opposed to being flashy,
Oh,
spending up?
absolutely. I mean, I was in Atlanta about week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and I watched us blow about 500,000, 300,000 on drinks and hookahs and it was just like, wow, what could we do with $500,000? I just opened up a dispensary, and $500,000 right now would probably put me in a position to take over an area that 15 dispensaries are at, and none of the people that own these dispensaries look like me.
So your name, for people that are not familiar, like I said, with your story, is obviously familiar for a different reason. Ricky Ross, when they see Rick Ross, they think of obviously a very successful rapper. And then your story, as we mentioned, Snowfall. So talk about those instances where, people have kind of taken your likeness,
Ripped me off. They ripped me off and gave me nothing for it. The rapper Rick Ross, he did it. John Singleton did it. John Singleton bought one of my first books when it came out. Matter of fact, me and John went to the premiere of my documentary, Freeway Cracking the System. We went to that premiere together.
Wow.
And I just got my books that same day. It was crazy that the premiere of the because I self-published my book. So they sent my first copies out, my first 10 demos. The books had demos on the cover. And when John saw them, he wanted one. And he bought one for $100 because I wasn't going to sell them. because I was gonna keep them as collector's items and give them to some special people. And not saying that John wasn't a special person, but you know, I really wanted to give them to like family members and stuff like that there. So he bought one for $100, and I had no clue that he was gonna take that book and build a TV show off of it that I wouldn't be included in.
Let me ask you this before we wrap. How much money did you have, do you think, when you at the time that you was locked up, right? How much money did you have, property? Like, what would you say? Like, what was
when I went to jail?
Yeah. Time you went to jail.
When I got arrested, I had about $800,000.
Okay.
In the 80s.
So
that was cash though. That was cash, not counting properties. I think when they estimated my properties at that time, they estimated like 12 to 15 million.
So because that was another part of Gary Webb's story, right? How they would take properties. So all of those properties was seized, right?
With Gary, yeah, not all of them. No, a lot of my family squandered off. You know, didn't know what to do. Wouldn't collect rents. I mean, when you come from a family that has never had nothing, it's hard to get them to understand how to protect whatever it is that you have. Even right now, you know, it's amazing that I have a dispensary, and maybe 3 of my family members walk through the door. I'm talking about brothers, cousins. They just don't understand the value of, even if it's not yours, protect it, because you still benefit from it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, it's one of these things, right, where I just wanted to kind of say that, because it's like, all right, you have $12 million in property, you have almost $1 million in cash, but you do 20 years in jail. And I'm assuming when you get out of jail, you're starting from, you don't have anything, right?
I had $200 when I got out, and I made that from jail.
So it's like, you know, for people, just to kind of paint the picture that it's never really worth it. It's never really worth it, right? Because it's like, to be a multi-millionaire, but then to come out and then to have to start all over again after 2 decades, it's one of these things that the government always finds a way to win.
Yeah, well, you know, a lot of my problems was my ignorance. You know, not understanding money, not understanding people to the point to know, because I had to leave that 800,000 with somebody.
Oh, they blew that shit that year. Oh, exactly. My God, yeah.
And I was building houses at that time. You know, I had a construction company going. You know, I mean, I had junkyards, construction, tennis shoe stores, beauty stores. I had tire and wheel shops. I mean, you talking about somebody who was making the kind of money where I could spend $200,000 in a day and it wouldn't affect me at all. I was making about $200,000 to $300,000 profit every day.
And then just reinvesting it, just buying different businesses, real estate, stuff like that.
Right. Because I didn't really spend money. You know, I wasn't wearing a jewelry. I've never had a real car, you know, like a Mercedes Benz, or, I mean, I done had Mercedes Benzes, but they wasn't a car that I felt was my car.
Got you. Okay.
Like my 66 Chevy, that was my car.
Yeah.
You know, nobody could buy that car. Nobody could drive that car. The cars that I used to own was cars that was for sale.
So you put the houses in your family name and they sold them, or
exactly. You know the game, because you can't put them in your name because the government gonna take them.
But and those houses would be worth what today? 40 million, 50 million?
Somebody estimated that if I had all my property that I had, it would be like 150 million.
Oh my God.
It's one of these things, right? So right now you're in the legal marijuana space, right?
Yep.
So talk about that, as far as you transition from the underworld to the legal world, but there's a lot of hurdles. It's not easy for entrepreneurs, especially Black entrepreneurs, that's trying to get into the legal marijuana space. Talk about the hurdles that you're currently facing now.
Well, the biggest hurdle is that you're fighting against people who've been in this business, you know, when it was illegal. And they have bags of money buried. really, some of these guys, I know a guy in the marijuana business make $40 million a month.
A month?
Me and my manager just went over some numbers the other day, and we looked up, I think it was 3 or 4 of the biggest companies, and they're making like $25 million every 2 months, $30 million every 2 months. So these are the guys that you're up against. You know, I'm up against a guy that has been in the marijuana business for in my area. He's been in my area 15 years. So he's rooted in that area, and he doesn't want to share.
Yeah. And it's the other world of it too, where like some of the cartels have gone clean and went like when I used to live in Colorado, so in Pueblo, Denver, when Silver Peak was at its prime, you have some fierce competition there. Like it's not an easy industry to get into.
Well, the guy that I was telling you that made the $40 million, that's making the $40 million a month right now, he was financed by the cartel. It was a cartel member who helped him start the business. Cartel member went to jail, and when he went to jail, he didn't know that the weed business was going to take off because they wasn't making the kind of money that the guy's making now. And he said the guy just told him he could keep the business.
Well, Rick, I know you got.
The good thing about me right now is that I get to talk to these guys because they have a lot of respect for me and they give me their game. What they don't know is that I'm going to share this game with as many people as I can.